heard you talk about this before, but this, we tend to lean on these kind of rote sprint drills where it's, hit this position and do this, and, this wall drill or this kind of march and skip variation. Like, is there a time and a place for that stuff, or is it probably more so let's lean on the exploration, let's lean on, maybe a little bit more meaningful variability, let them kind of play and explore and find that rhythm, so to speak?
Yeah. I'm not convinced that the typical warm up, like, okay, let's do, walking marches and lunges and A skips and B skips and C skips and backwards run. I think that certainly carries value without question. My question to that would be, would it be better if you dug into a couple of those things with more depth, right? Like, I'm very much into like a lot of educational topics. Like I mentioned, I have younger kids, so my wife and we listen to like stuff that bags on the modern educational system quite frequently. And one of the critiques is that you have kids who are they're in 7 different classes. And this is where like a lot of alternative education differs from traditional education, where traditional education, you have 7 different subjects the whole day or whatever. And so you're learning each for an hour. And the theory would say that learning is very wide, but it's not deep. And a lot of it doesn't really stick. Versus alternative schools like a Montessori type alternative education will have longer blocks of one thing. And a lot of it's very autonomy. There's a lot of self-driven autonomy into a deeper period of time. And so the question may be then, and this is something I'm working through currently as I'm making my mind up on this, especially to working with younger athletes, because I think it's okay to do those drills, but you have to ask yourself, well, what if we just do iso lunge and we work in that for an extended period of time, or a cross connect march and we just work that for 5 minutes? A lot of my workouts, like my off day workouts, where it used to be like, okay, it's a flush out day. And a lot of times it would be, all right, here's a medicine ball circuit with 8 exercises, and here's a crawl circuit with 8 exercises. And yeah, it definitely gets you flushed out. It's very variable, but I'll also put like, here's a very simple day of flush out work is rolling exploration. So just do rolls for 15 minutes, however you like, the variability comes from how you choose, but you're rolling. And by the end of that 15 minutes, you're gonna be pretty good at rolling, but it's this a very, like, there's a lot of ground. And then it might be 10 minutes of standing cross connect and take breaks when you want. And by the end, you will be so familiar with all the impacts of that cross connect that you would never get to with, I hate to say 3 sets of 10 because I think 3 sets of 10 is okay, but a lot of times you just touch on, and then maybe at the end it's like, all right, do 300 Superman cross crawls, like Tommy John style Superman cross crawl. And in that sense, you are becoming very, very familiar with, as you pass through layers of fatigue and depth of how your body operates. And so that's a very depth-oriented day and system. And I don't think we tend to consider days on the level of learning. And so that just being said, I just think the common thing, it's not that A skips are bad, but I don't know, what if you did 400 meters of A skips and saw what happened? And I think you learn a lot more about how it transfers or doesn't transfer to the thing you're doing. And even something like, and that's just where I think there's so much argument about X training method. Is this good? Is it bad? Why don't you go do it for 30 minutes and tell me what you think, because no one wants to spend that much time with something. And even something like, okay, like sprint dribbles is very common. It's a tool, right? Is it good? Is it bad? Do sprint dribbles for 200 meters for a few sets. And sorry about that. My phone is connected to my computer. I don't even have it here, but it's ringing. So I apologize. It was funny if it was Paul Cater. I'll talk to him after. It's a sign. But if you do dribbles like for 200 meters, then sprint, see what happens. For a lot of people, your legs are going to feel like iron rods. You're going to be so externally rotated, you're not loading on the internal. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's rare that we expose people to a stimulus for long enough to gain true depth. It's usually like, do the protocol. Trust me, it's good for you. But there's not as much of that giving that athlete that embodied experience. But again, it can be challenging in an environment where if you're in the private sector and I have athletes come in and it's like, okay, we're going to start with 10 minutes of cross crawl or 3 minutes of iso lunge, and they aren't bought in, then they might be like, oh, this is boring, or why am I doing this? And a lot of times too, people who there could be a lot of really good athletes who don't have the discipline for that. So, and maybe you have to then find something they do attune to, and it's probably more related to their sport that they can find a level of discipline with. So